Hi everyone, a very good day. Today we're going to start off with Unit 7, which is about elements and compounds. So let's go through this particular chapter for today. Now, what are the objectives that we're going to go through in this chapter is that at the end of this topic, you'll be able to actually define what's atom and how are you supposed to explain the structure of atom, how are you supposed to differentiate the elements and compounds. Okay, and then several elements in periodic table, you're going to list it out, and then properties of elements and compounds, you're going to state it out, name the compounds, and finally, how are you going to write the chemical name and also the symbols, right? So let's move on into the topic. So what are atoms? Atoms are actually the smallest unit of the matter. So an atom is actually the fundamental piece of matter whereby everything in the universe is actually involving atoms, right? So what are these subatomic particles here? The most important part is that you need to know that subatomic particles consist of electron shells. Okay, you have electrons here within the electron shells, and then you have nucleus. Within the nucleus, you have proton and neutron. Okay, and then one single atom is actually, they call it as the atom itself, but then at the same time we can also call it as an element, right? For example, hydrogen, helium, carbon, nitrogen, they are all elements. So what is the definitions of element? It's a substance that made entirely from one type of atom, right? So different elements actually have different properties. Moving on, what do you call a molecule? A molecule is actually when two or more atoms which is being joined, but they have to be from the same type. For example, the hydrogen molecule, one hydrogen atom combined with another hydrogen atom forming hydrogen molecule, right? And then you have nitrogen, same goes to the nitrogen. One nitrogen atom combines with another nitrogen atom forming nitrogen molecule, and also oxygen molecule. Now, what are compounds? Compounds when there is two or more atoms of different types initially joined together. So the chemical term for this compound, what are the important terms that we have to remember is the word bonding here. Okay, so for example, you have a sodium atom and then it bond with the chlorine atom forming sodium chloride. Okay, the other name for sodium, you call it as natrium, that is the chemical term. But when you write it out as in, you call it as sodium chloride. Okay, these are the properties of elements and compounds. Now, properties of compounds, they often are very different from the properties of element that they make. For example, water is made up of two atoms of hydrogen and then one atom of oxygen. But what actually happens is the room temperature, hydrogen and oxygen are both colorless, odorless gases, so they remain gases down at extremely low temperatures. So water, however, is a liquid whereby the temperature is up to 100 degrees and it's also a solid at 0 degrees Celsius. So it has been a test to eventually find out whether water is an element or a compound. So what do they do is that they did a decomposition of water into oxygen and hydrogen. So due to the electric current, where they actually call it as electrolysis of water. So what initially happens is that they fix up with the anode and cathode, okay, and they actually determine how does the electrolysis process happens within this oxygen and hydrogen, right? So earlier time they do identify, before the research goes on within this water, to actually identify whether it's an element and or it's a compound. Initially it was an element because they feel that it's only one type of atom, but when they did this electrolysis method, okay, then they came to know that water actually consists of two types of atom, initially hydrogen and oxygen. So these are the atoms and elements. For example, hydrogen, the symbol is H, helium is He, lithium is Li, beryllium is Be, boron is B, carbon is C, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and neon. Okay, so the most abundant elements is definitely oxygen, silicon, and aluminium in our Earth's crust. Right, so then we are moving into the periodic table. So here a very simple thing is elements that are arranged left to right and top to bottom is actually the increasing of atomic numbers. So the rows you call it as periods, and then the column you actually call it as groups. So this is one of the examples of metals and non-metals in the periodic table. So this is how we are supposed to find out. When it's a group, it's group 1 to group 18, and then period is from, period 1 to period 7. So that's all for today's lesson. So hope that you understand very well. Thank you so much for listening and have a nice day.